Well, joining me now is journalist and self-professed anti-fascist Kit O'Connell. He's in Austin, Texas. And in New York is Andy Ngo's friend, Brandon Straka. He's the founder of the Walk Away campaign, which says it encourages those on the left to walk away from today's Democratic Party. Good to have you both on the Newsmakers. Kit O'Connell, so the president tweeted, he always tweets, but he tweeted about Antifa. Consideration is being given to declaring Antifa the gutless, radical left whack jobs who go around hitting only non-fighters, people over their heads with baseball bats. A major organization of terror, along with MS-13 and others, would make it easier for police to do their job. So, Kit, do you support the radical left whack jobs? Are you one of them? And is the president right in maybe trying to declare you a terror organization?
Well, you know, I think the first thing to address is that Antifa is just short for anti-fascist. And so it's anyone who is against fascism, white nationalism, white supremacy, people who are advocating for genocide or ethnic cleansing. It's not an organized group such as the other ones that the president cited in there. It's not like MS-13 where there's a leadership or a hierarchy. Antifa are your neighbors. They're people that research white supremacy and extremism, and they're people who take the streets to try to protect their communities. So, no, I don't believe that most of Antifa would qualify as radical left whack jobs. I'm also unaware of any incidents where baseball bats were used.
Right.
The vast majority of what Antifa does is nonviolent. It involves research and communication and you know, identifying threats to our communities.
So, Kit, just to be clear, the sort of violence that was directed at right-wing activist Andy Ngo, do you believe that that was just isolated, few rotten apples? Do you condemn it?
You know, I wasn't there, and so I don't feel like I can really speak to exactly what happened on that particular day in Portland. I can speak to some of Andy Ngo's activities, though. You know, as an activist writer for Quillette magazine online, you know, he's helped push race science. He participated or live streamed a Proud Boys attack on a bar in Portland, and then helped to dox one of the victims who had a broken vertebrae, putting her in further danger. So that's what I'm much more concerned about than whether or not Andy was roughed up or had a milkshake thrown at him at Portland.
Well, I mean, it's clear that he had more than a milkshake thrown at him. He was beaten up, right? So, I mean, I think all I'm asking is very directly, somebody smashed him in the head. Was that wrong? Because the people who smashed him on the head claim to be representatives of Antifa.
I mean, again, there's no centralized organization for Antifa. People acted in the moment to protect what they felt would do what was necessary. They felt to protect their community. And not being there, I'm not going to second guess them. Again, Andy Ngo has put me in a great deal of risk himself. His publication, Quillette, helped get me on a hit list for journalists from an Adam Waffen terrorist. So again, I don't understand why we're not having conversations about the right-wing violence. The right-wing have an actual body count right now.
No, but
we have incels killing people. We have Proud Boys beating people up.
Kit, on this show, we do it all the time. That's why this is the one time we have a move within the government where the president himself, Ted Cruz, and others are calling for Antifa to be called a terror organization. That's why we're having this discussion. But let it be known that we always look at extremisms on all parts of the spectrum, right? So I just want to kind of...
And I appreciate that. So, you know, I think, you know, if... I understand. You know, if we're condemning anti-fascism, that means that we're promoting fascism. The only reason to condemn anti-fascism in the United States is if the United States is a fascist country.
But listen, Kit, I mean, in the abortion debate, some people say pro-life. Does that mean the other side is anti-life? Some people say pro-choice. Does that mean the other side is anti-choice? Words have meanings and they're loaded, right? So it doesn't mean that everything that Antifa does has to necessarily be virtuous just because they're anti-fascist. I want to bring in Brandon Straka, and the reason I wanted a few minutes with Kit because I wanted to understand some of the perspectives coming from within Antifa. Because it's very hard to actually get Antifa representatives on this program. We tried very hard. We had one person who said, I'll come on, I'll wear a mask.
I wonder why.
I'll wear a mask, I won't be named, and so on. So I really appreciate Kit, you know, giving us some perspective and also giving us some depth and analysis about how he's faced hate and so on from people who support Andy Ngo. Brandon, To start off with, do you believe that Antifa should be labeled and listed a domestic terror organization?
Absolutely, because they are.
They haven't killed anybody.
So you have to kill people to hate people to be considered a hate group?
Okay, so let me put it
this
way. The Ku Klux Klan is legally considered a hate group only in the United States, not a domestic terrorist organization. So you're telling me that Antifa should be listed a terror organization, but not the KKK?
I'm saying that any organization that masquerades under the assumption that they are fighting fascism, when they in fact are fascists, when they in fact are the people who are coming to peaceful demonstrations with baseball bats, with bottles of quick-drying cement to throw on people's faces, with bike locks that they're beating people over the head with, that are coming to violently disrupt peaceful protests, and then say that they themselves are the anti-fascists. This is the most fascist organization that is in America today. If it weren't, the people wouldn't be wearing masks over their faces. They wouldn't be afraid to come out and publicly say, look, let me just make something very clear right now. There are very few people, if any people in the United States, who will say that they are pro-fascism, that they... I'm anti-fascism. I'm a Republican. Every Republican that I know is against racism, is against fascism, is against bigotry. But you know what? We fight it openly. With our faces exposed, we don't have to hide our identity, and we are just as against Nazism, white supremacy, wherever it exists, as anybody else. The problem that we're seeing here is that this is
Could have fooled me. It's your president that's saying there's very fine people on both sides.
Yes, you've openly misconstrued that statement by the president. And this is another problem. Thank you for bringing that up. This is another problem that we're seeing with these organizations.
What about his S-Whole Country's commentary? What about what he's saying about Ilhan Omar?
Excuse me.
That's not racism? That's not racism?
Okay,
no,
let Brandon finish, and then...
It is not racism.
There was no cement in Portland. There was no cement in Portland.
Okay, Brandon, go and finish your point, Brandon, and then I'll get a response from Kit. Kit, give Brandon an opportunity, please. Brandon, go ahead.
Absolutely.
You're right. All right.
Absolutely. What we have here is a group of deranged people who are looking for a place to be able to act out on their violent impulses. What they're doing is patting themselves on the back and saying, thank God for us, we're fighting fascism. No, guess what? When you're a person who has violent impulses, when you're a person who has deranged impulses, guess what? Pretty soon, everybody's going to start looking like a fascist to you. Everybody's going to start looking like a white supremacist. I myself have been a victim of Antifa. Antifa has openly acted out multiple times to shut down events that I put out. Guess what? Why? Because they say I'm a white supremacist. Because they say I'm a bigot. These people will label anybody who disagrees with them politically as a white supremacist or a bigot and use that as an excuse to grab their baseball bats and their bike chains and go and crack some people's skulls. These are deranged individuals, and they are, in fact, a terrorist organization.
Kit O'Connell.
You know, none of my friends use bike chains or baseball bats. And the, quick read, if anyone looks up even the basics of how quick drying concrete works, you can't mix it with milkshakes. You can't just throw it at people. People would have had concrete all over themselves as well as the people that they were targeting. What we're seeing right now is the right wing are playing victims. Absolutely, the police are lying. Yes, absolutely. We have documented evidence that the Portland police work very closely with fascist organizations like Patriot Prayer. There have been leaked chat logs showing that they allowed them to have sniper nests, that they coordinate with them to try to reduce their risk of arrest, and to help them target anti-fascists.
Sorry, allow me to come in here for a second. Kit, allow me to come in here for a second, right? Because you're saying, Kit, and this is fascinating, you're saying that the police work with fascists, and in Portland they are. On the other end of the spectrum, Ted Cruz has called for a federal investigation of the mayor of Portland, who's also the police commissioner, because Ted Cruz believes that he's working with Antifa. So both sides are claiming that the other side are extremists. What's going on here? Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle?
Well, Ted Cruz is it's very well documented that Ted Cruz is in fact extremely close to these groups. There's photographic evidence, there's documented evidence of him hanging out with militias, of him palling around with the head of the Proud Boys, and of him working very closely with these dangerous terrorist right-wing organizations. You know, I don't know why, again, yes, we're here talking about Antifa, that's great, but you know, we have terrorist organizations like Atomwaffen in the division in this country that have put people on, you know, on hit lists, including myself. Just recently, we've had multiple book fairs attacked by Nazi groups. That happened to me when I was teaching a class in Houston in 2017. The building where we were was surrounded by white supremacists who were trying to force their way into the building and attack people. You know, Imran, I've been an activist for years and years and years. I got my start at Occupy.
You are insane.
And during Occupy,
You're an insane person.
During Occupy,
you feel like everybody is a white supremacist.
During Occupy,
of course you feel like you're surrounded by white supremacists because you think that everybody is a white supremacist.
Yeah, Brandon,
what degree of Republicans? No, you actually didn't. What degree of Republicans?
I
would like to know what percentage. Excuse me. I would like to know what.
Excuse
me. I would like to know what percentage of Republicans you feel like are white supremacists.
This is ridiculous. We're not having a conversation here. He's shouting right-wing talking points at me. This is not a conversation.
Okay, so listen,
if you want to have a conversation here,
that's not a right-wing talking point. That's a question.
Let's take a breath.
What percentage of Republicans are white supremacists?
He feels you haven't given him a chance to finish his point. Kit, for the sake of the discussion, maybe add to your answer what percentage of Republicans you would feel are white supremacists, and then Brandon, you get a chance to respond to that. Okay, so Kit, go ahead. But Brandon, please don't interrupt him for the next 30 seconds. Go ahead, Kit.
All right, what I was trying to say is that I've been an activist for a very long time. During Occupy, we were able to have conversations all across the political spectrum. I was happy to talk with Republicans about our common concerns. But what's changed in the last few years is that when we organize, when we have meetings, when we have rallies, when we meet to discuss queer rights or we meet to discuss human rights or Black Lives Matter, we face physical attacks from Nazis and fascists and Republicans and white supremacists and Proud Boys. The people of Portland are exhausted from dealing with this, and those same people fly between places like Portland and Austin. Base Stickman was just convicted of a felony assault charge in Austin because after he came to join people like this in Austin to attack a left-wing rally, he then went to the bars to pick fights with other people he thought looked like liberals and commies. That's what we're dealing with, and that's who we're protecting our communities from. As for what percentage of Republicans are white supremacists, I don't have an answer for that. That's not something I came prepared to answer, and it's not something that, honestly, like the vast majority of Republicans, if they're not out in the street in my face advocating genocide, I'm not that concerned with them. I want them to change their political views, and a lot of what I do is advocacy, try to make a better world. But that's not what I'm concerned with here. I'm concerned with the people who are attacking us in the streets, who are targeting organizations, who are trying to dismantle the rights of people in this country, and are trying to advocate for genocide. That's what I'm concerned about, and those are the people I'm concerned about, whether they identify as Republicans or not.
Brandon?
This is just, every bit of this is disingenuous. It's completely backwards, and every bit of it is a lie. A moment ago, he said that it's the right wing that's playing victim. No, it's not. You never, ever hear about Republicans going out and attacking people for wearing an Obama shirt or wearing an Obama hat or for advocating for their liberal policies.
We absolutely do hear about that. There have been multiple incidents of that in the last few years.
Give the man a chance. Brandon, go ahead.
So you're not interrupting. Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So what we hear about all the time, though, are leftist organizations like Antifa attacking people for wearing a MAGA hat, attacking people for wearing Trump shirts, attacking people just because they want to speak in colleges and universities. These are the groups that are throwing Molotov cocktails and bringing baseball bats and chains and literally beating people like Andy Ngo, who was just trying to do his job as a reporter, because they want to shut down your First Amendment right to free speech. They want to shut down any constitutional rights. And once again, these are not normal, well-adjusted human beings. These are people who think that everybody is a white supremacist unless you give them a reason to think otherwise, which comes in the form of, do you agree with me? If you do not agree with everything these people say, you are a white supremacist. And then that gives them permission to attack you, to dox you, to physically assault you, to do anything that they want. It's all under this disingenuous guise of anti-fascism, but they in fact are the fascists. Imagine if we were in Germany in the 1930s and the Nazis were saying, as they were, the Jews are the enemy, the Jews are the enemy, we're the good guys, we're fighting the Jews are the fascists, the Jews are the fascists. This is what we're seeing here. This is so dangerous. I cannot express that enough. We have a group of people who are fascist, terrorist, deranged people who are being propped up by the liberal media because they call themselves anti-fascists. They are completely un-American. They are completely against your constitutional rights, and they are violent and they are dangerous.
Okay.
And they need, if they were, why won't they show up without a mask on?
Okay. So
why won't they reveal their identity? Nobody's trying to hurt Antifa.
I want to ask Kit a question related to tactics here, right, and the broader politics, because there's one strain of thought that the president is whipping this up right now, that Ted Cruz has written that letter to Attorney General Barr right now and wanting prosecution or investigation under RICO and under the Patriot Act and so on and so forth, and bringing Antifa into the spotlight purely for political purposes ahead of the election. So just like the president waded into the fight between Nancy Pelosi and AOC's squad, in the same way the president's trying to put Democrats in a pickle here, where you're in a position where you either condemn Antifa or you support Antifa, and it divides the left. Do you think that that's what he's doing? Do you think those are the intentions politically? And if so, how do you respond then?
Okay, that's a good question. Thank you. I do think that that's part of it. It certainly does put pressure on the Democrats to state their positions. But I think there's a bigger thing at play here, which is that we're looking at the ongoing criminalization of dissent. You want to talk about people's free speech rights? We have a right to advocate against fascism. We have a right to expose people that engage in white supremacy and advocate for genocide. And what we're seeing here, their definitions of Antifa are going to be so loose that it's not just going to be the people in Black Rose Collective in Portland. It's going to be people like me. It's going to be people who are like your neighbors. It's going to be people who are members of Black Lives Matter. What we're seeing is a path towards the criminalization of dissent in this country. And that's a very dark path that we're going on. And I find it extremely ironic that the so-called free speech defenders, like our other guest today here, are advocating, in fact, for a crackdown on dissent. And I find that to be appalling. That's my response to that. I think that every left-wing organization and everyone who stands for justice needs to stand up for our right to dissent and our right to protect our communities.
Final response from you, Brandon.
Yes, I'm not trying to do that at all. I absolutely think that you have the right to free speech. I think you have the right to demonstrate. I would always fight for your right to do that. If you want to go through life thinking that everybody who disagrees with you is a white supremacist, that's fine. I think that's your right to do so. What you don't have the right to do is stop other people from speaking, showing up with baseball bats and clubs, throw quick-drying cement on people, physically attack people, intimidate people, and say that you're doing a good and noble thing under the guise of fighting fascism. You are, sir, a fascist. You are the fascist. You are the Nazis. So, surprise, let's cut to the end of the movie. The enemy is you. And President Trump is absolutely doing the right thing in trying to make the Democrats be held up and held responsible for this and take a position. Look, do you support this fascist terrorist organization that is Antifa, or do you support free speech? Do you support the American way and Americanism? We can have both. We can have free speech, but what we can't have is an organization that's wearing masks just like the KKK and coming out and attacking people just because they want to have the right to free speech and demonstration in this country just like anybody else.
Okay.
And if you're so worried about your right to free speech, if you're so worried about your freedom, take your mask off and reveal your identity.
Okay, you know what? Usually, I was going to make that the last word, but usually when somebody calls the other person a Nazi, I think it's my duty to give them 20 seconds to finally respond, Kit, and then I've really got to wrap because I'm really out of time. Kit, very finally, please.
Thank you. I think I encourage people to read the Antifa handbook or some history of fascism. You know, fascism isn't just wearing masks or specific tactics, like whether we stand in the streets or not, whether we oppose right-wingers, whether we oppose Nazis, that doesn't make you a Nazi. That's victim blaming. It's like saying
Nazis.
that, you know, whoever smelt the fart dealt the fart.
You're
That's
not
not
the
how
victim.
the world works.
You are not the victim.
Okay, gentlemen. I've got to
You
wrap.
are a violent terrorist organization.
Okay.
That's what you are.
Looking forward to talking to you both sometime soon once again. But I've got to wrap for now. Kit O'Connell and Brandon Straka, thanks for joining us.